Welcome to the Riveting Rhinestone Art, and today I am painting a series of birds to depict the stages of grief, or as I call them, the ashes of grief. And first, what I'm doing is I wet the first bird, and now I'm applying some color, and I'm just trying to dab it on. Right now I'm kind of outlining this first bird, as you can see. Just dropping some color in to try to give it a very loose effect, no structure. And I'm also going to be using some black. You could just follow along with me. And you could use whatever watercolors you have. I have 2 sets on the desk. You can't see them though. Just dropping some color, trying to give the impression of a wing. And we're going to do the same process with the other 4 birds. So first you're going to wet the birds with clear water and then start literally just dropping color in. Here I'm adding some black at the bottom because this first bird is going to represent the first stages of grief after you've had a great loss and you're feeling kind of stuck and dark. And for whatever reason, these dark birds always give me a little trouble. Maybe it's an emotional thing, if that makes sense. Then I move to the other side of the painting to give that dark bird a little time to dry. So I'm putting some water on this bird. And this bird is going to be more of an orangey yellow. To me, it represents one of the stages of grief called denial, where everything seems sunshiny and bright. And keep in mind that as a mental health counselor, which I am, I know a little bit about this topic. And also that grief is not linear, and what that means is you could be feeling really in turmoil. Oh, actually, it's not the yellow bird I'm doing. It's the blue bird, which to me represents more of a clarity and a healing process. So grief is not linear, which means it doesn't. You don't go through grief in a straight line. Grief can go up and down for years, actually. Someone said to me once it could take 5 years to recover from a major loss. And as I was saying, it could take that long, and that's normal. That's human. And we need to be kind to ourselves. So here I'm dropping some color still. This turquoise or cornflower blue, I don't know what the color's called actually, into this little bird. And I am going to add a little dot of white on its tummy. Just kind of lightens it up a little bit. And you repeat this process for the other 3 birds. So with this bird, the middle bird, again, we put some water on it. That way the color can really spread out nicely. And this bird is gray. And to me, at least in my experiences with loss, it's where how I felt was gray for quite a while. And that's why this one is different shades of gray. You could always fast forward and speed this up if you're done with your bird and to move on to the next one. I know this video is about 30 minutes long, but I wanted you to see it in real time, how long it takes me. And also to encourage you to take your time too. So again, same process, and you notice I skip around between the birds, and I do that to make sure that the bird next to it is dry, so the colors won't bleed. So I'm putting on a coat of water. This bird will be red, so this bird will depict one of the stages called anger. And again, we go back and forth between anger and denial and joy, depression, so many different subtleties to loss and grief. And depending on the relationship with the person, that will determine how long you stay in each stage and when you flip back and forth, because that does happen. So this one is red. And again, I'm just dropping color, trying to outline it a little bit. I do like that. I like to outline. You don't have to. And again, you could always fast forward if you're getting bored or you're done with this bird. Before I dropped a little bit of white in the tummy, and now I'm adding a bit of a burgundy color to darken it up, because along with that, those angry feelings, there's still a darkness. Here, again, my two surrounding neighboring birds are dry, so I'm adding a coat of water. And this bird is going to be what we call denial, where you feel all sunshiny and you think your grieving process is over. Nope, not over. But we can still appreciate those periods of joy that we do feel. And I'm going to use two different colors here. I'm going to use a bright yellow and I'm going to use more of like a burnt orange. I like to add on all the birds darker colors or more concentrated colors towards the bottom, like where they sit, and the top of their heads. It makes them look a little more natural. Even though these birds are, I think, more of an abstract quality of bird. Right now they look like weird eggs, right? And I'm going to be honest with you, as I'm sure many of you feel too when you're painting, kind of halfway through I just want to rip it up and throw it out. Try to resist doing that. And you'll see why at the end, because it does all come together. Now the birds are pretty dry here, so I'm taking my brush dipped in some brown to create that branch. Turn it a little bit on its side too. I do add a little water. And then next I'm going to take a little bit of green. Actually, the green I use, it looks like a lime green. But it doesn't come out that way because it blends in nicely with the brown color. Just go over that. And even the branch is going to wind up looking great. So don't rip it up yet. Dropping some of the green in here. And I'm going to go over that a couple times. I'll also use a finer brush to get a little bit of detail, just a little bit. Now I'm going to use a very fine marker, very, very fine, black or dark brown, to draw in the eyes and the beaks on the birds that are dry. This is where the paintings start to take life, where you're giving your birds some character. And the beak, you don't have to fill it in like a solid black beak. Kind of rough, if that makes sense. Now, because I love to outline, I take my very fine brush and in the same color of each bird, I just outline in sections because I don't want it to look too outlined, if that makes sense. If you don't want to outline, you don't have to outline. It's your painting. Next, I start to paint the tails of each bird. So I start with a little, almost like a square under each bird, under the branch, and I paint lines straight down. I used to have a tendency to make these tails too full, and someone said to me once that they look like fish. And I saw that right away, so I changed it. And again, I use the color that the bird is painted in. So this tail is a combo of black and that dark burgundy color. And also, to give you a heads up if you're working faster than this, then I take the thin brush using one of the colors of the bird, and from the base of the tail, then I streak the color down. You'll see a little bit later on. Sometimes I apply a little water first before I do the tail, so the paint can bleed more, as I did in the last two birds. And if you have any questions or comments on how to do this, please ask. Now I'm going back into the yellow-orange bird because that birdie was a little bit too wet to add the eye and the beak. So we're almost there, almost done. Now I draw little feet. And as you can see, I'm using that fine marker again. And they're really just curved lines to look like they're grabbing the branch. Do birds have feet? I don't know if they're called feet. Claws? And now you can see how these little sort of egg-like shapes are looking like birds finally. Now I'm taking that fine brush like I mentioned earlier. Again, pick a color of the bird. Just do a couple of streaks. It just makes it look a little more realistic. Gives it a little more dimension, I should say. That's what I'm doing here. with that very fine brush. Kind of going back and darkening the base, adding a little water, make it bleed a little bit more. And I keep next to me, I don't use a palette all the time, though that dish you could see in the video I've used as a palette. I use different things for a palette. Or sometimes I just use that little sheet of watercolor paper you see by my left hand. I'm going back into the branch with the thin brush, a little brown, and I wet it a little bit. Now while that's drying, I like to sign it, and you could sign it any way you like. I put my initials and the year, and this one I'm calling Ashes, like the ashes of grief, or the stages of grief, but I wrote Ashes on this one. Next I'm going to put a splatter on the painting with the different colors of the birds, but I don't want to get the paint or the splatter on the birds themselves. So I loosely put a piece of paper or tissue, and make sure your painting is fairly dry because you don't want to lift off the paint. So what I just did there was I took some of the burgundy black color and I experiment off to the side on the left. And it is kind of going all over my desk, but I'm going to clean that up and I'll show you how you do that. Then I take the red, the reddish burgundy again. Now I have the gray. And next I'm going to take that burnt orange, burnt yellow. I don't really know all the names of these colors, believe it or not. And that's okay. That's okay. Next and last is the blue. I gotta move my tissue over. This is so fun, right? I think the splatter really helps to fill in the background and again give it some more dimension. Now you might say, oh, what a mess is that, right? So I keep next to me, I don't know if you could see that in the lower right corner, I have a pack of makeup wipes that I wipe my hands off too when I paint because, I am left-handed and sometimes the paint gets on my hand if I'm leaning it against paper, and I use the wipe to wipe up my desk. So that is the painting.